Good morning, my name is Jamie. I can't play guitar. This is the Daily Hangout for July 9th, 2023, and this is our excuse to watch videos with all of you here on YouTube live. Typically we stream pretty early. Right now it's 5 a.m. So welcome. We're here. We're ready. We have a lot of videos queued up. We're going to get right into it. It is Sunday, so happy Sunday, everybody. Hopefully you had a good weekend so far. We celebrated my parents' 40th wedding anniversary, which was pretty chill. And everyone in my family, I can't thank them enough for throwing just an amazing party. I was up in Canada, so while I was part of the planning, all the credit goes to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who really made it happen for my parents. And we had some rain, but it was still a really good time. So that's what I've been doing this weekend. Hopefully you have been spending some time with your friends and or family. And let's get into this first video here. The Facade of Steven Crowder, An Empire of Hate and Hypocrisy by Aubrey. It's published 1 day ago, and it's got 542k views as of me watching it. We're gonna like it because we like Aubrey, and it's gonna be interesting. I've got some other videos queued up, but this one is an hour and a half, so we're gonna let her rip and play some actual guitar like we have not been. We've been bad, and we've been bad, and we haven't been playing what we've been streaming, so let's bust it out. Thanks y'all for coming. Please enjoy, and let us know what you're doing this morning in the chat, how your weekend's going.
They did it because they're part of the elite ruling class, that they're exempt from the rules, and that's arguably worse. They want to force everybody else to live by
This edit is amazing.
and aren't willing to do it themselves.
I have a dream of 9 crack holes at a Motel 6.
Michael Mitchell, I'm globalist.
Been in the news a lot lately.
This is a dangerous man. It's pandering a little bit.
One of them racists.
Horrible working conditions.
It was venomous. It is disgusting and it is vile.
Do you believe it's plausible that Steven Crowder is just a monster?
Jeez.
There's nothing I love more than bad stand-up comedy. Nothing fascinates me as much as watching some overconfident drunk idiot get up in front of a packed crowd on open mic night and just letting it rip.
Yeah. You want to make out?
Oh no.
You know what's sitting in the front of the crowd?
It's almost incredible how bad you are at this.
I don't think enough people appreciate the genuine level of intellect, timing, and planning that goes
it's
into
tough.
crafting a well-thought-out joke. It's a talent, and it's not hard to see who has it and who doesn't.
I'll bake some Mexican cookies, and you go over there, I'm like, what the f***'s a Mexican cookie? What are you talking about? It's like a chocolate chip with sauce all over it? What are you talking about?
Not everyone is cut out for such an industry, but that doesn't keep them from trying.
So I drove here. Notice a really disturbing trend in cars nowadays. I don't know if you folks have seen these dream catchers. Is this thing working? Okay, thank you, sir.
If your stand-up career doesn't work out, that's okay. You can always pivot to selling overpriced mugs and t-shirts that totally don't have slurs written on them.
The Che Guevara Socialism is for Figs t-shirt.
If you found yourself spewing incoherent drivel to make up for an evident lack of talent, then your name might be Steven Crowder,
my
a man who
God,
refers
dude.
to underage girls as slutty, tweets about wanting to have sex with his mom, I guess, and
the
threatens his
fuck?
pregnant wife when he thinks no one is
Oh,
watching.
this is
I love you,
hilarious.
but Steven, he's sick.
Watch it.
Sick.
Watch it.
See, Steven was once a leading figurehead
watch
of
it.
the online conservative movement,
watch it.
respected by his peers and adored by his audience until a series of allegations made by former friends, family, and
that really hurt
colleagues
him?
tarnished his good name, even in the eyes of fans. His own comment sections have gone from endearing words of support to complete disdain just over the past month alone. But if you've been following Steven as long as I have, then you know these instances are just as much horrifying as as they are consistent with his public persona. A wannabe comedian who failed so hard at his craft that he sought out alternative means to fulfill his incessant need to be liked, being paid millions to sow chaos and contribute to what makes political spaces so poisonous in the first place. But before we get to all of that, we do have a sponsor, Bespoke
Fuck sponsors.
Post.
We are not sponsored. Sorry, Jabbery, we're not sponsored. Fuck all sponsors. Sponsors can suck our dicks.
That Stephen's shallow dichotomy challenging my regarding guns. I was brought up in a Christian conservative household, and when I was given internet access, I wanted to watch somebody who said things I was used to hearing regarding guns, climate change, and Obama. Not that I actually understood any of those issues, but at 14, I didn't care about challenging my perspective on the world. I wanted somebody who would reinforce it, someone who would validate it, and Steven Crowder was that. Stephen's shallow dichotomy of Republican good, Democrat bad, satisfied the confirmation bias I was at the time searching for. And that's ultimately one of the things Stephen's best at, presenting a right-leaning perspective in a way that's easy for the youth to digest. In fact, he's long been accredited for putting a young face on conservatism, which is different from the old white guy club that people see too often, at least according to Chris Lash, a friend of Stephen's and husband of NRA spokesperson and local psycho who once compared gun owners to rape victims, Dana Lash. Another writer critical of Stephen echoed a similar sentiment when he told the Daily Beast in 2013, Stephen's being promoted because he provides a very good face for the right wing to reassure its older generation that 20-somethings don't really support gay marriage and are concerned about income inequality. In the beginning, Stephen carved out a niche for himself where he could be easily seen as a more modern breed of conservative, while still very much holding the same views as an older generation of pundits that were being increasingly seen as out of touch. Stephen could reach young people in a way that Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh no longer could.
866 Gold Line. My N-word. That didn't really...
Because Stephen wasn't strictly a political guy. No, he actually denounced that label from the very beginning. Steven Crowder has always been a self-described cultural person, whatever that means, and would rather think of himself first and foremost as an actor and, of course, comedian. Sorry, but I'm making you watch a stand-up with me. If I had to see it, so do you, motherfucker.
Oh, no.
And I don't want to say if you take the Greyhound bus, you're ugly, but if you're ugly, you take the Greyhound bus. Joy Behar is so mind-numbingly stupid.
He's talking about Joey Behar.
Sitting across from her, talking with her, and not even having the same conversation. Well, Miss Behar, I think this debt is getting out of control. I don't think that we should be passing it down to our children. I know! Like my ex-husband never used to wash his feet!
God.
I'm just saying that, we're passing a debt down onto our children that they can. I know, I love blueberry pancakes.
Keep in mind, this is the kind of stuff he whips out when he really needs a laugh. Well, that or his nuts, apparently, but we'll get to that later. This might shock you, but Stephen isn't exactly known for a comedy that challenges the way we think.
Biden sharks do Biden sharks do Biden sharks do Biden sharks.
Most of his act consists of making pretty mundane observations.
You guys seen this? It's a Native American Indian contraption, consists of wooden hoops and feathers, supposed to help you sleep soundly.
Getting cheap applause from an audience that already agrees with his politics.
Herman Cain. There you go.
9/11.
And finding ways to show off his world-renowned impressions of other races, which honestly he still can't really do.
So you get these Middle Eastern wannabe thugs. You're nice people, but you can't pull off the thug look. Like, oh, you know what? I am going to mess you up hardcore. Hey, check out the German white boy. I want my nut on the left side. Yes, that's the crib side.
Wow. Holy shit.
I won't show you anymore because I am against cruel and unusual punishment, but for what it's worth, part 2 of his act only got about 20% of the views that his first part got. So if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about his theater skills, maybe we should take a look at his IMDb page where you can read about his breakout role on, you ready for this? Get ready. Arthur.
What would you think of me if I ever got anything wrong?
Yes, it's hard to believe my first exposure to this man was when he voiced the Brain on a show my sister and I grew up watching. And to make it even more surreal, one of the episodes is literally about Brain trying to become a comedian and failing.
Well, now that things have changed, I need to be practical and train myself for a new career in comedy.
You're going to be a comedian?
I just smashed an atom.
Are you crazy?
No, just practical and willing to face facts. No use crying over spilt milk.
Stop him! You've got to do something fast before he humiliates himself.
Ironically, Steven was predicting the rest of his career with this one, as he struggled to find work outside of Arthur, with the exception of a few minor roles in the late 2000s, including the jock character in a Pure Flix movie and an appearance in a feature film directed by his brother Jordan, where he pretty much just plays himself.
It's a double standard. It's like the women's rights thing is a double standard. Like, now they have, but now we're not allowed to hit them.
Steven's media career wasn't exactly popping off in the way he may have hoped, but that's not to say there wasn't an audience for his style of entertainment. See, despite growing up in Canada, Steven was always interested in American politics, and it was only a matter of time before Steven launched his own YouTube channel, weighing in on whatever political matters were relevant at the time.
You really can't find anything funny about this administration when Joe freaking Biden is vice president? What? It's like having Rain Man as vice president.
Yeah. Definitely make a better VP than Joe Biden. Hillary Clinton, Rain Man, make better VP than Joe Biden.
This stuff was so quality. Steven eventually caught the attention of Big Hollywood. No, not Hollywood. Big Hollywood was an affiliate of Breitbart News, the fringe right-wing news website accredited for giving your grandparents a computer virus. Turns out Breitbart and PJTV, never even heard of that one, were pretty big fans of what Steven was doing over on YouTube in 2008. And don't worry, I took the liberty of diving into the dark vat of Steven's old content, so you don't have to.
On Elm Street, the nightmare continues.
What the fuck?
Now, whether Steven wants to admit it or not, conservative comedy isn't the most competitive industry, given how most mainstream comics, entertainers, and even musicians are typically left-leaning, meaning Steven never had to try as hard to get noticed, given the path that he chose for himself was always so narrow. Before long, he was being recruited to do stand-up at various Republican conferences, making his long-awaited rap debut at CPAC 2012 with the single Mr. America. I think I'll just let you be the judge of this one.
Oh my god.
What, knickers? No, it's okay. I can say knickers because I wear knickers.
Great job, Steven. Your tireless effort to engage the youth in America is encouraging. I want to hear this on the radio. Better than anything else
lady
on the
dancing.
radio
I just
right
want
now.
that clip of her
It's time
forever.
to give rap music a second look. I can't do this shit, man. In 2009, Steven Crowder landed a job as the youngest media correspondent at Fox News. At that point, he had climbed the ladder from YouTube to obscure propaganda sites, and finally to the biggest cable news network in the country, cutting his teeth on extremely pretentious op-eds that have aged absolutely tragically in light of recent revelations. In one bizarrely judgmental article titled "Waiting Till the Wedding Night, Getting Married the Right Way," Steven writes, as anyone who's read my abstinence column here at Fox News Opinion could guess, what an incredible sequence of words that is. My wife and I not only waited sexually in every way, we courted each other in a way that was consistent with our publicly professed values. We did it the right way. Now, of course, Steven is referring to a personal choice that he and his wife made together. Saving sex for marriage is a completely fine and acceptable thing to do, just as it's also fine and acceptable to have sex before marriage. My hot take is that there isn't a right or wrong way to do it just as long as you and your partner are on the same page.
Take.
Everyone is different, and that's fine.
I
but
enjoy
Steven
this hot
disagrees,
take.
going on to write that he doesn't care if you feel judged, since he and his wife were apparently mocked all the time. People laughed, scoffed, and poked fun at the young, celibate, naive Christian couple. We'd certainly never make it to the wedding without stupping. Looking back, I think the women saying those things felt like the floozies they ultimately were, and the men, with their fickle manhood tied to their pathetic sexual conquest, felt threatened. Side note, but Steven might possibly be the worst writer I've ever seen, and he's writing it on their honeymoon? Sorry, babe, I'll be there in a sec. Finishing up my Fox News abstinence column before we can get to stupping. I don't want to focus too much on this one article, though, since we still have so much else to cover.
I don't have anything to add. That was just fucking gold. He wrote it on his... Oh, God. Sam Cedar humiliated Steven Crowder. I don't dislike Sam Cedar, but, like, come on, man.
But for Steven to assume the role of an authoritative figure on the concept of marriage, morally grandstanding on anyone who may have had a different experience than him, only for it to be revealed that he's been abusing his wife behind the scenes for years, tells you everything you need to know about Steven Crowder. This article is an embarrassing read, not just because it's littered with incomprehensible slang from what I can only assume is the 1920s, but because it perfectly encapsulates everything Steven represents, a reality in which he conceals his ugly intentions behind a wall of judgment, hate, and hypocrisy in an attempt to spread an ideology. And he's been doing it forever. In December 2012, the conservative advocacy group Americans for Prosperity, funded by two billionaire brothers, by the way, crashed a protest in Michigan regarding the state's recently passed anti-union right-to-work law. With the help of Steven Crowder, the group of right-wingers erected a giant tent in an effort to aggravate union members who were there protesting, causing a dispute that resulted in Steven getting punched in the face by a union worker. While the full unedited footage showed the man being first pushed to the ground before getting back up and decking Steven in the jaw, this crucial bit had been mysteriously left out of the version Steven posted to his channel for some reason, making it seem like the man had attacked him unprovoked. This was not only the narrative Steven tried to spin on Fox, but the edited clip ended up being the one sent in to the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office in an attempt to press charges against the union worker.
Dunning's question why Crowder didn't initially provide the original footage.
Holy shit, young Sam Cedar.
I'm not holding that against him,
Like
but
John
why
Oliver.
would they provide the edited video? The longer video clearly shows the guy got pushed down and came up swinging. I think that's the polite way of the prosecutor saying they tried to provide us with false evidence.
Though after reviewing the unedited version, prosecutors ultimately ruled the man in fact acted in self-defense and dropped the case. So at the end of the day, this was all just Steven Crowder whining on national TV about an event that he and his own group instigated.
So on that guy's back, we had it. I saw that guy's back go down, and then he came up off his feet. Yeah, there he is. What is that, Steve?
He did go down. We were there trying to prevent
listen,
people
Steve,
from being hurt in tent.
you deserve what you
liar,
got.
Sir. You are being swallowed. Your unions are being swallowed. These are babies flailing before being put to bed. They are violent. This was not an isolated event. Look around you, man.
Steven was finally dropped by Fox News only a few months later for reasons that are still up in the air to this day. Some say it had to do with contract negotiations, while others insist it was because of comments he made about their biggest on-screen talent at the time, Sean Hannity. But most hilarious to me is when one senior employee at Fox told the Daily Beast that Steven was never that funny anyway, and crossed the line more than a few times. Do you have any idea how obnoxious you need to be for even Fox News to turn against you? To add insult to injury, leaked Twitter messages from Fox's very own Greg Gutfeld seem to allude to how frankly unlikable Steven was on a private, personal level. Keep in mind, these messages are all alleged, as I can't personally verify them myself, but it is worth noting that Gutfeld has yet to deny or disprove their legitimacy. Plus, they kinda already fall in line with Steven's public persona, so just let me be messy here for a second. They're funny, okay? He has issues. I met him at a bar once, and he sat Indian style on the floor in the middle of a crowded bar. He was asking me what he thought of the looks of his fiance. How f***ed up is that? She is beautiful, but he couldn't judge. It was like he was shopping for a car and was asking his friend to take it for a test drive. I nodded and wondered how I got into this mess, adding, me thinks he has an issue with his sexuality, which is fine, but it's so obvious to everyone but him. He was only at Fox News for like 6 months. We all hated him. He acts like he was a badass who left Fox. No, none of us could stand him. He wants to be a star and hates everyone who took that risk, and he didn't. He calls himself a comedian, but doesn't perform. That's how the Schumer thing started. I would not let him call himself a comedian on my show, and Amy knew that. I hated him for saying he performs. What Gutfeld is alluding to here is an old episode from his show, where Steven and Amy Schumer were both guests. And as you can probably imagine, having these two in a room together didn't go well.
And, you know, you slip by the dirty comedian thing, but honestly, you call yourself a comedian, but you don't do it that much. Like, I go fishing a couple times a year, but I don't introduce myself on TV as a fisherman. Wow.
From that moment, Steven would make it a priority to slam Amy Schumer from the comfort of his own studio any chance he got, in a crusade that you cannot tell me wasn't a tiny bit personal.
By the way, Amy Schumer, you're a fat slutty role model. Taking pride in being a fat bag of potatoes. She's the guy she accuses all the guys of being, only she's way grosser and fatter. I'm fat. Snacks.
Triggering the libs, though, would become the focal point of his new show on YouTube, Louder with Crowder, launched soon after his falling out with Fox. And this is where you really get some of the most potent feminist-owned videos that plagued all of YouTube in 2016.
Hey, feminists.
With his first viral video being #SJW Feminist Festival crashed by Crowder in underwear.
Prove once and for all that not all feminists are fat, unattractive, boy-cutted, androgynous amoebas.
What?
Oh my God.
Epic editing there, Steven. Why he needed to go the extra mile and strip down to his underwear is beyond my reasoning, at least. I think him being removed has less to do with them being offended or whatever, and more to do with Steven intentionally irritating and causing a scene on purpose just to get a reaction for the internet.
Excuse me, ma'am. Talking about body shaming? Let's talk about male body shaming. Should I be ashamed?
It's not even about politics at a certain point. It's just about Steven being a public fucking nuisance that nobody wants to be around. But after racking up a juicy 30 million views, Steven and his producer, Not Gay Jared, which is a totally normal thing to call your friend, by the way, would make a habit of crashing these left-leaning events for the sole aim of exposing the liberal agenda.
We're not gay together.
But if you ask me, it was mostly an excuse for Steven to dress up as a woman, as he liked to do over and over and over and over and over. I'm not going to keep going, but it is funny that for a guy who thinks trans people are grooming your kids, Steven sure can't get enough of wearing his wife's clothes and touching his producer in front of children. Like the time he and Not Gay Jared convinced a bunch of people at a feminist rally that they were trans women and were met with kindness and support by the people there.
We quickly found out that nobody questions, criticizes, nor runs security background checks on trans. Hands up our puppies! This puppy grabs back.
Nice going, Steven. You really own those feminists by lying to them and taking advantage of their hospitality for cheap clicks.
Fucking
you definitely
idiot,
look like
dude.
the reasonable person in this picture.
Man.
In case it's hard
There's no
to tell,
background
these
checks
videos on
at
Louder
this
with
rally.
Crowder really didn't contain much substance outside of Steven working backwards from an already established conclusion to prove some kind of flawed hypothesis. Sometimes not even he understands what it is he's truly arguing for. Take, for example, his position on trans athletes. Steven personally wants to see trans people competing in sports with the gender they were assigned to at birth. It's something he's long propagated across his platforms. But here he is complaining about just that.
This is Mark Beggs, a senior from Euless Trinity High School near Dallas, is in the process of transitioning from female to male and taking low dose of testosterone. Just entered a high school wrestling tournament with an undefeated record and, surprise, won. That picture says 1,000 words right there.
Hey, Steven, that is a trans man competing with cis women. He's being forced to compete with women because that's what people like you are arguing for. This is what you want. And this trans wrestler in particular, Mac Beggs, has openly expressed wanting to compete with cis men because it just makes more sense, but he can't do that because Republican-backed Texas law currently requires trans athletes to play in an athletic league which matches their biological sex determined at birth, something that Steven encourages and supports.
My position is biological males compete with biological males, biological females compete with biological females.
Like, Steven, if you're watching, first of all, hi, what the f did you mean by this tweet? And secondly, just suspend your political bias for a minute and imagine if there were hundreds of bills circulating around the country invalidating your right to live a normal life. Imagine if your basic access to healthcare, education, legal recognition, etc. was all up in the air for a small group of politicians to dictate. Something about that seems a wildly big government to me, a gross overstep of legislative power that a small government conservative like yourself should frown upon. But Steven Crowder and the dozens of other vocal opponents of trans rights, freedom of expression is trumped by blind hatred for those that are just different from them. Despite freedom being one of the deciding factors that makes America the best country in the world, according to Steven.
But not only do I believe that our healthcare system is superior to those countries, but there would be another reason outside of healthcare. Let's assume that healthcare were better in those countries. Freedom.
But it's just he doesn't believe everyone deserves the same access to the fundamental freedoms he's been given. At least that's what it seems. But Steven doesn't seem to value those he personally deems inferior and would rather resort to ostracizing them in a public setting the same way he was ostracized and bullied as a child.
Oh, but don't you feel a little bad for the bully? He's just a kid. I feel zero bad for him. And you know what happens when bullies aren't stepped down early in their childhood? Gaddafi.
You'd hope someone like Steven, who has talked about being on the receiving end of relentless bullying throughout his life, would be one to stand up for those who have been unfairly attacked for committing the cardinal sin of trying to live a normal life like the rest of us. But instead, Steven takes the low road and chooses to relish in the power he now gets to wield as the bully himself.
I think it's better that the bully learn his lesson now as opposed to later on in life when somebody snaps as an adult. It gets uglier.
Steven Crowder, a man who ironically brags about his strong Christian values, likes to spend his time berating people who strangely aren't white by threatening to call ICE on Mexican workers.
I need papers. Do you have papers? Don't call ICE, you motherfuckers.
Steven enjoys showing off his impression of Martin Luther King Jr.
5 things you don't know about MLK. Bet you didn't expect to hear MLK and crack whores. I have a dream of non-crack whores at a Motel 6.
And when he's not making a mockery of black farmers,
I don't know where you find this many farmers of color.
I'm all black. Man.
I'm gonna plant that corn.
Go get a John Deere. I'm the president of plowing that ass.
I planted a Hennessy tree, but it's not growing.
Turns out the soil content is a high level of meth.
Crazy.
Wow. I didn't know.
God,
he's
dude.
disingenuously
That's a white drug,
recreating George Floyd's murder in an attempt to exonerate the psychopath convicted of killing him.
Was it unpleasant? Yes. Is there any way that would kill someone who was in moderate health? I can't see it.
Steven's been known to make a mockery of Asian people on the sole premise of them being Asian.
Oh, that is an aggressively Asian face.
When he's not wearing a dress or cosplaying as a rootin' tootin' sheriff with his fake little gun holsters in his studio, he's poking fun at whatever he thinks Islam is.
Islam, the religion of peace. Allah Akbar!
Excusing the torture America inflicted against prisoners at Guantanamo Bay.
I personally believe that prison should be as unpleasant as humanly possible.
Yeah, because all the little boy rape is so non-violent that the Catholic Church does. So non-violent, all those crusades.
Take a look at some of these torture techniques used at Club Gitmo. We've got slight sleep deprivation, repeatedly playing children's songs. People out there, do you honestly believe that America is losing its moral high ground and consider this torture?
Killing 2 birds with 1 stone in his embarrassing portrayal of not just Muslims, but also trans people in his critically acclaimed video, Transslur Bane versus Jihadi Bond, which are 2 different franchises. I mean, that one doesn't even make sense.
What what the fuck is this nonsense, dude?
Steven loves to make the exact same joke about trans people every single year on Trans Day of Visibility. Confusingly blamed trans rights activists for there being a higher rate of trans suicides.
Is anyone surprised when it's a 42% attempted suicide rate? You don't have that anywhere else in the demographic. That would suggest some kind of mental proclivity toward extreme behavior, and I don't think it's helping people to simply enable it. I don't want nearly half of all transgenders to attempt suicide. I want that to be lower. Guess what doesn't work? You saying, you're all good, you're a woman. It doesn't help, it makes it worse.
Had this to say about victims.
Wouldn't it stand to
what a
reason
bad take, Steven.
the victims of rape would usually, not always, generally be those who are most desirable sexually, considering the crime? Maybe like the 5s to 10s.
Oh my god.
I mean,
Are
like,
you
don't
fucking
carjack an
joking
98
me right now with this take, dude?
I've searched, and I could be wrong about this. There are many, right? How many times have I been to a Change My Mind? It's always a blue-haired, would-be lesbian feminist who claim they're... As far as I know, not one Victoria's Secret model has been...
And at the beginning of his career, did a really fun and tasteful bit he liked to call Cultural Appropriation Week, where for about 5 days straight, he and not gay Jared began their show dressed in whatever caricature of a costume they had lying around that day.
This week, the mystical, age-old culture
Not gay Jared,
of
wow,
China.
amazing. Oh, wow, wow.
I like the glasses is that combination. Like it's kind of like the other woman. Take them off. Put them back on. Ooh. Ooh, okay.
This is
now,
cool.
I understand
This is,
Steven's fans may be quick to
Holy
write
shit,
these things
man.
off as nothing more than edgy jokes, and that his critics are just being snowflakes for getting mad at such
This is the
top-tier
voice I use for my son.
comedy. But it's hard to make the argument that these are just mere jokes when they still accurately reflect the real beliefs Steven appears to hold. For example, Steven has stated that he's a traditionalist who doesn't believe in the concept of gay marriage.
Myself personally, I am pro-traditional marriage. I agree with the president on this.
You can't then turn around and make such unfunny jokes at the expense of gay people and expect viewers to suck it up and buy your socialism is for figs shirt.
Gayness is still funny. It's absurd, so it's funny. It would be the same thing if a duck walked in right now wearing pajamas. We'd be like, oh my God, there's a duck in pajamas. Wow. What are you doing at CPAC, duck in pajamas? I would have never imagined that. It's the same thing when there's a dude like, hello, you look delicious.
There's just no way to genuinely write this stuff off as innocent jokes when it's rooted in something that you genuinely believe. By 2019, Steven had really taken off in popularity, thanks to a little series he likes to call Change My Mind, which is ironically something Steven never actually does. Even if you've never watched an episode of this thing, you've probably seen the memes. The premise is that Steven travels around to various locations, mostly college campuses, and sets up a booth to debate random people on whatever issue he's feeling that day. Maybe it's fascism, gender, immigration, Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, you know, non-incendiary topics like those. For the most part, he uses pretty eye-catching and intentionally offensive language to trigger a more passionate response from the people there. Why? It's exciting to watch people scream at each other, I guess. Plus, it's always helpful to make the opposing side look as unreasonable and shrill as possible. Steven is banking on the fact that most of these kids are liberal, so having a substantive conversation with someone who disagrees with him shouldn't be a hard thing to do. But the problem with these debates is that the scales are already tipped so much in Steven's favor that it's really not much of an evenly matched exchange of ideas.
You start taking hormone therapy, it changes the way your muscles grow, and you're not actually given that much of an advantage, or they don't have as much of an advantage as you think they might. You know?
Are you sure about that?
Well, I guess I'm not sure, but I also not sure about anything. It's a f***ing hormone, you know how it is.
This is his show after all, so of course Steven picks the topic, the setting, the circumstances, who gets the microphone and when, what makes the final edit and what doesn't. Plus, he's already given himself ample time beforehand to prepare his talking points as much as he needs, whereas the kids he's debating left their dorms that morning not expecting to debate their beliefs on things like abortion. They haven't made a career off politics like Steven has, making them easy targets for him to rain down upon with facts and logic, even when those facts aren't actually facts. For example, take his video America is Not Racist, Change My Mind. Steven at one point claims that the US has a higher class mobility compared to the rest of the world.
First off, we have more class mobility here in the United States than anywhere else. certainly than Canada.
Define class mobility for me.
Meaning there are more people in the United States who end up in the top 30% of income than anywhere else in the world. At some point in their life, we're in the top 10%, including people go from the top 10, from the bottom 10 or the bottom 30 to the top 30. The top. There's more class mobility here in the United States, more ability to rise out of poverty into upper middle class than anywhere else in the world. It's not even close.
Only I don't know what Steven is going by. Sure, he links to an image of a random study on screen, but even this doesn't show the US compared to the rest of the world. According to the World Economic Forum, America ranks 27th beneath all these other countries. Not what I would call high, personally. In another one on abortion, Stephen finds himself perpetuating the notion that the majority of late-term abortions are not a result of medical complications, but rather because the woman just feels like doing it.
You know, women who do have late-term abortions, they're not out here walking around at 8 months pregnant saying, you know what? I don't feel like having this baby anymore. Let's just get rid of it.
Sure they are.
No, they're not.
That's almost all late-term abortions.
There's a majority that are medically induced and necessary.
No, not a majority.
Well, whatever ones that are not,
nearly
then those
never.
are not.
But I'm not sure where Stephen got this either. Considering just how exceedingly rare abortions in the third trimester even are, making up for only 1% of all abortions across the US.
Jesus.
This means the data on why women would need to get an abortion later into the pregnancy is extremely limited.
So the term late-term abortion is not a medical term, and it often really complicates this discussion because people kind of take it to mean something like a third trimester abortion or abortion just before or during birth, which are not really things that happen. And I think that it kind of really distracts from the conversation when people use that terminology. For reference, only about 1.5% of U.S. abortions happen after 20 weeks, and this is usually what people are referencing when they say, quote, late term. The percent of those that are due to life threat or lethal fetal anomalies is really hard to track because they aren't always reported, and when they are reported, they aren't always reported with a reason, but a vast majority of them will be because of a lethal fetal anomaly or a serious complication and risk to the person who's pregnant. I would venture to say that all abortions that happen between 20 and 24 weeks fall into 3 categories. Most will fall into those 2 groups of a life risk or lethal fetal anomaly, and the remainder are people who wanted to have an abortion earlier but didn't have access. So the irony here is that people who talk about this, Crowder absolutely included, are almost always against easier access in the first trimester, which directly increases how many people seek termination later on in pregnancy. I have had more patients than I can count who have experienced not only the trauma of having to end a pregnancy that they wanted, but then having to go on and be repeatedly traumatized mentally by family and friends, having these conversations in such black and white, non-compassionate manners. We can.
Yeah, so trigger warning, reproductive health, and those kind of things. So yeah, she puts it super well in that, like, it's very hard to track, but the ironic part is that if Crowder actually cared about, quote unquote, in his words, reducing late-term abortions or reducing the amount of people that needed to have or were having in general abortions past 28 weeks, just increase access to it would reduce that number. She didn't give a percentage, but like I can imagine it would cut it like in half. Honestly, it sounds like a big reason why people can't get an abortion or have to have abortions so late is lack of access to abortions. So it's extremely goofy. It's like a snake eating its own ass, but we already kind of knew that. So that's what she's talking about here. The fact that Crowder is railing against late-term, quote-unquote, and again, she's saying late-term abortions isn't even a medical term, so clearly did his research super well. He's using a propaganda term, and these after 28-week abortions are exceedingly rare, and they also could be cut down and lessened, which everyone would love, because even if they're medically necessary, they're extremely risky. So it's less risky to do it earlier, and we could do that by increasing access to reproductive health care, and we've not been doing that. So yeah, very goofy here. I like this lady.
Not forget the fact that this number is probably going to go up because we have taken away access that was previously difficult and now is impossible for probably 50% of people in the U.S. So the only outcome of that is going to be that more abortions happen later in pregnancy because people have to spend time and money figuring out how to get access when they can't get access where they live or in the state that they're in.
The issues that Stephen tries to condense into just a few short words are far, far more nuanced than he'd have you believe. And he does this kind of thing constantly. Like here, when he insists America's healthcare system is the best in the world simply because hospitals in Canada and Europe have a higher mortality rate, which apparently means they have worse care.
Don't just look at the one portion of the equation. How much are you spending? What are you getting from it? What is the rest of the world getting from privately funded healthcare?
The reason why less Americans are dying in a hospital, if true, wouldn't have to do with hospitals in America being better quality. It actually just means more Americans are dying at home because they can't afford to die in a hospital, which you might recognize as literally the opposite of his point.
But Stephen will stop at nothing to make sure he comes out looking
Some more good
smarter
news,
than
thank
the
you.
other person in the heat of debate, even if he needs to pivot to another talking point. If you watch enough of these, you'll sometimes hear Stephen say things to the effect of, hold that thought, or let's put a pin in that, when his opponent says something that actually makes sense. Only Stephen never comes back around to those points.
What's your position on the minimum wage?
Hold on a second. Is this your changing my mind? I want to make sure.
Yes, I want to get started.
Okay, my position on the minimum wage. Yeah, you know what? I'm not a fan.
Are you against illegal immigration and legal immigration from poor third world countries?
Of course I'm against illegal immigration.
Well, I'm trying to convince you that your own objectives, if you're a conservative, cannot be achieved under capitalism.
Okay.
And so I'll give you an example of that.
Yeah.
You have a lot of Republicans like Paul Ryan. You cannot deny that he is a big capitalist, and he has lots of capitalist donors that would like nothing more than to increase their profits. I think you can agree with that. And people like that have been opposing immigration reform for decades because they believe that mass immigration will lower the wages of the working class and increase their profits.
Okay, so I would agree with you on that.
So if you impose a minimum wage, you're not going to have this mass immigration coming in because the companies that are taking these illegal immigrants and taking these low-wage immigrants, if they had to pay them $15 an hour, we wouldn't have mass immigration like we're having right now.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that I agree with that premise. So let me kind of go, because first off, before I would like to take that, hold it. What example will we point to before we go on? Because I know a lot of times we disagree.
Let's
of a
hold
successful
it. Let's just hold it.
country.
I don't like it.
They just get forgotten
let's
as
not
the
even hold
conversation
it,
trails
actually.
elsewhere. Stephen
Let's
also
just drop
loves to move the goalposts when he senses his opponent making an argument he isn't able to disprove.
He's like,
the idea that there have been
I put some
different
water in my mouth.
genders
Fuck.
outside of man-woman for centuries.
Okay, how so?
Yeah, India. Yeah, in
Sure.
India, you know, they have third gender. Native American cultures, they have third genders.
Sure.
In ancient Egypt, they had third genders.
Okay, so you do realize, and you talked about how very different it was from Western culture. So antithetical to Western culture, you named India, ancient Egypt. You know what else? We also believe in that's antithetical to those cultures. We're against slavery.
He tried to claim the idea of two genders was a new one when the individual in classes corrected him with historical examples that proved him wrong.
Where those
he immediately
civilizations
pivots.
were? They're like
Stephen
into
is
slavery.
relying on the people he's debating to not be prepared, so it's easier to twist the conversation wherever and however he wants.
Bro,
and if things get
worst
too hot,
debater
he can
ever.
always just pass the mic to someone more naive.
More gay
Defined,
Jared.
it's a very specific definition. You came in and just said shill. And I'm really quickly to get ready to give the microphone to someone else. If you don't stop doing this, because this isn't the goal of this. What's a shill?
Well, I think you're getting upset because you're losing the debate. But
That's fair, that's fair.
Yusuf.
Yusuf, I appreciate Yusuf taking the time. Everyone give a hand to Yusuf. Appreciate it very much. We'll grab someone else here. Thank you, Yusuf.
Or, you know, just using a woman's own abortion against her.
Maybe let me tell you something. What you ended was a unique genetic code that had eye color.
Are you fucking joking?
Hair color, how tall it would be, how much it would weigh, its personality, proclivity toward mental illness, what kind of hair pattern to male pattern baldness.
Are you joking right now, dude? She's working so hard not to fucking choke you out right now,
It's a
bro.
scientific fact.
The fact is that it was a choice, and it was something that had to be
Holy
done.
shit.
Like, even if you're pro-life,
Bravest-
what kind of
bravest
excuse
person
is
ever.
it to weaponize something so personal against someone for the
fuck,
sake
Stephen
of
Crowder,
looking
man?
cool in an amateur amateur debate with a college student.
Yeah, you look cool
Just
to like a
cruel
12-year-old
example of his
only.
strategy to come out looking intellectually and morally superior, no matter the cost. On the surface, this show may present Steven as having a willingness to change his mind if someone can convince him to do so. But that's not the same sentiment he expressed in this clip at the beginning of the series.
So it's important, this isn't about just a debate or a highlight reel. The point to this exercise is to actually get people to question their own point of view and see if their argument is rational. And maybe at the end of it, they'll end up changing their own mind.
See, in case it wasn't painfully obvious enough, Steven never intends to change his mind. I know, hard to believe. After so many episodes of this show, the only thing that Steven's ever reconsidered is his opinion on Teslas. Now he likes them, I guess, because they personally benefit him and his wife.
I have changed my mind on a subject.
Really?
Teslas, let's go.
Great. The Change My Mind series, though, has never been anything more than cheap entertainment, masquerading as some open and intellectual exchange of ideas, in which Steven's beliefs somehow always end up looking the best. Steven knows his audience doesn't want to see evenly matched debates. That's boring. They want someone dunking on a woke college freshman on their way to their next gender studies class or whatever. They want their preconceived view of the world
funny how there's little Steven Crowder clones that
is
are on
more than happy to provide
YouTube
them
and TikTok
safe
shorts now.
space. I mean, if you were really looking to have a productive and nuanced conversation, wouldn't he debate real experts as opposed to naive undergrad students?
Yes.
There's a reason he's continuously backed out of debates with people you'd think are on Steven's same level of political prowess. Take Peter Hadfield, for example, a YouTuber who frequently debunks pseudoscience and climate change denialism on his channel. After baselessly trying to refute Hadfield in 2017, Steven Crowder challenged him to a debate, to which Hadfield accepted, but was surprised to see Steven fail to show up to their previously scheduled live stream. Well, I'm sure there's a good reason for that. Maybe that was during one of Steven's many hospital visits. I mean, who's to say? He'd only do this again with Cody Johnston, a left-leaning YouTuber who challenged Steven's position on gun control in 2017.
I pointed to an actual investigation done by the state of New York with actual hidden camera footage of someone actually trying to buy and successfully buying a gun at a gun show. That's all I pointed out. And his response to this was to tweet in all caps, "Challenge accepted," and then say we would debate. Not would you debate me, but treating my little segment as a direct challenge and request to debate him. I would show this tweet of his, but he deleted all of the tweets associated with it. Here's my response, if that helps. I still am not sure what he wanted to debate.
But perhaps the most famous instance of Steven debate dodging is with Sam Cedar, another political commentator and voice of Hugo on Bob's Burgers, who Steven has tried to avoid at all costs, starting when he inexplicably dropped out of a debate with Sam at the 2018 Politicon, then hilariously tried to lie about it, which may not have been the best move, considering there's an entire phone call out there with an event organizer confirming Steven got, quote, cold feet and had to bail at last minute.
You've never gone to
is the phone call.
I did want to talk to you about the debate.
They had the phone call.
Okay.
So it seems that Steven Crowder has maybe gotten some cold feet.
Okay.
And feeling a little intimidated, so I don't think he's coming.
He's not even gonna come?
Right.
Why is that?
You know, it's a great question. I would love to ask it to him myself. He's not even answering anymore. I don't know what his team is doing around him, and that's, just for me to speculate at this point. I don't know.
He has a team? He has a whole team and he won't do it? He can bring the team.
I believe it's his father, but I can't confirm or deny that.
Okay. All right.
I'm not
So now that we're all up to speed, let's fast forward to summer 2021, where Steven gets into an argument with Ethan Klein, challenging him to a debate. Ethan accepted, but days before it was all supposed to go down, Ethan tapped Sam Cedar and asked if he would want to pop into their call the following Monday. Sam agreed, but in order to be there on time, Sam ended his show that day 30 minutes earlier than usual. Everything was going according to plan until minutes before the H3 podcast podcast went live, Ethan receives an email from Steven's booker, his dad, it's his dad, let's be honest, that Steven's pregnant wife had to be rushed to the hospital and that they need to reschedule for the week after. Because the timing was so peculiar, Ethan immediately suspected Steven's team must be keeping an eye on Sam's show and canceled out of fear that he may ambush Steven during the H3 podcast.
Oh no,
Sam was
dude.
quick to dismiss at first, only for Steven to later admit to monitoring Sam's show after the fact. That's how terrified Steven was of facing this man in anything even resembling a debate.
True.
You're so clever. I had no idea that you were taking your show off early last time, coming in today with your pig pen peanuts eyes.
I'm very genuinely unsure what it is about Sam Seder that strikes so much fear into Steven Crowder, but by the time the H3 debate finally rolled around, Steven's worst nightmare finally came to fruition. And I do mean nightmare.
Oh, there he is. Oh no, Sam Seder, what a fucking nightmare. I had no idea this was going to happen. I thought Ethan was a stand-up guy. This is where we are. Yeah, I told Dave, remember I told you? I said I guarantee you he's gonna do anything he can to avoid the debate.
The day Steven was meant to go live with Ethan, Sam had pre-taped his show and aired it as if it were live to trick Steven's team into thinking it was safe, assuming they were watching. Turns out they definitely were, and were entirely blindsided when Sam joined the call. And as you can probably guess, things got messy fast.
I fucking love
Take those off for the velveteen buttons.
You can say a lot of things about Ethan, but the man orchestrates chaos.
I didn't want to do it.
Sam, come on.
Steven, you are such a coward.
Entertainer,
Stop showing your
man.
little leprechaun co-host who comes out dressed like your sidekick.
Come on, Ethan, why do you have to bring on a guy?
Steven!
So he can't build an audience, and so what happens is he uploads 15 times more, has less than a 50th of the audience.
Well, that's why he wants to debate you, is so he can build his...
Sam, come on.
Your audience cares that I only have 1 million subscribers and you have, what, 6 or 7 million subscribers?
Let me answer. Can I answer your question? Can I answer your question? Can I answer your question? Do you want me to answer your question? My audience would say Sam who?
How did you know I ended my show
he's not going to talk
last week, Stephen? If your audience
because you're an idiot and half of your staff doesn't like you. Sam, fake stand-up comic who we can't find any footage about online. Let me finish.
I'm not a stand-up comic.
Oh, you're not? Okay, that makes sense because everything that I've seen is incredibly unfunny and unentertaining, which may explain the audience.
Irony alert, Stephen.
Thank you.
Coward.
Won't even take off the glasses.
I was right.
All right, yeah, you can give it the X.
You run away twice. Cold feet again.
Come on, Stephen.
Wow.
Becoming extremely irate, Steven went off on Ethan, switching his camera over to his co-host, and left the call within minutes of Sam showing up. No debate happened, because according to Steven, Ethan took the coward's way out. But then again, Ethan Klein has never claimed to be a master debater, which Steven was aware of, referring to Ethan as a layup in the days ahead of the debate. Not everyone is as experienced in the great halls of debate. I get it, I'm the same way. But Steven, on the other hand, does this kind of thing for a living. You would expect a little bit more from someone like him. And despite how much he loves to insist that Change My Mind isn't a debate, Steven prides himself on his ability to have open discussions on divisive issues that challenge our beliefs, with college students who aren't Sam Seder. Being blindsided by Sam in this instance still doesn't explain why Steven has gone to such lengths to avoid a conversation with him in the past. Is it because Sam is just an unfair, malicious debater who, as Steven claims, everyone tries to avoid? Well, I just don't think that really fits. So maybe it's just the simpler answer, that Steven Crowder is just not good in debates, and knows it's harder to use disingenuous rhetorical tactics to manipulate the conversation when it's someone capable of calling him out. Steven has demonstrated that he is incapable of defending his ideas on a genuine debate stage, and I think it's something he's always been insecure about. Much like Ben Shapiro, he'd prefer to take pot shots at college students that he can easily package into a triggered SJW compilation that gets millions of views on his channel. That's what reaches a bigger audience and makes his arguments look the best, after all. But at least Ben actually has real debates sometimes. Speaking of which, why don't we check in on how these two besties are doing now?
Well, folks, I'm sure many of you have seen the controversy that has broken out between, I would say, our former friend, Steven Crowder. I'm
former friend.
Personally insulted by Steven's behavior here. It really is one of the ugliest things I've ever seen.
Oh, well, that's sad to hear. Steven and Ben used to have such a close bond. Yeah, they were so cute together.
Lawyer present, right? Happy and
I'm just copping a peek! Got him! But these two have always had a long history of genuine friendship under their belt. One that predates online fame, with Ben Shapiro being Stephen's first lawyer who helped him negotiate his original deal with Fox News. That's how far back they go. They've helped each other out more than a few times professionally, which is why they effectively split the conservative community in half at the beginning of 2023 with their falling out. There's a lot of petty gossip to get into here, but trust me, we're gonna go over all of it. So sit back, relax with a steaming mug of Black Rifle coffee in one hand and your baby Matt Walsh plushie in the other, and let's get into it.
Is that real?
On January 17th of this year, Steven Crowder published a 27-minute video ominously titled "It's Time to Stop" to his main channel of almost 6 million subscribers. With no conventional intro, no jokes, and no cringy music video, thank Christ, Steven has almost a somber approach in making vague allusions to a conversation that he admits he's actively avoided.
This has been a long time coming. This is a conversation that I've actively avoided, sidestepped, and I've hoped and prayed that it not be necessary behind the scenes for a long while, but that's no longer possible. This has to stop, or I'm going to have to stop. This may just not be for me anymore.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. Steven has spent his entire adult life as a political commentator. What could possibly be so serious that it makes him question his future in the industry?
For the first time, I have to say that I believe many of those in charge in the right-leaning media are actually at odds with what's best for you, the viewer, the customer, and more importantly, the country.
Gosh, here we go.
We here at Mug Club, we thought that we were all in this together, that we were fighting the media, entertainment, industrial complex. But too many of those in charge of the big conservative platforms are verifiably in bed with them. Big tech is in bed with big con. The people you thought, the people I thought were fighting for you, a lot of it has been a big con.
That is obviously a very provocative statement, and I have to think that Steven chose his words very carefully here. He's trying to elicit interest, teasing us into believing there's some big bad enemy out to attack the little guy. He's hyping up whatever it is we're about to hear next as some earth-shattering revelation that could expose conservative media as we know it. What is Big Con and who's a part of it? Well, he doesn't exactly tell us, at least not in this video, but he does go on to detail a contract that he had been offered by an unnamed conservative media group, which included terms so restrictive and offensive that Steven went so far as to call it a slave contract.
I will transition Mug Club into a full-scale network with independent content creators who don't want to be locked into slave contracts. There's no need to be enslaved like this.
These terms basically said that if Steven's YouTube channel got demonetized again, he could see his payment listed in the contract slashed as much as 25% by the company making the offer. But again, doesn't say who that is.
If blank is boycotted or dropped by more than 50% of the advertising partners, the company is not able to replace them within 90 days, the fee will be reduced by 25%.
Though Steven does say enough to allege that whoever offered him this deal is deliberately trying to take advantage of him, suggesting they're licking the boot of big tech and bowing down to censorship to the detriment of conservative principles, and that smaller conservative personalities should be mindful of any deal that may be presented to them to avoid getting locked into something they can't get out of.
Just subdue you a little bit. Just soften your edges a little bit. Just play ball a little more so we can keep our content all monetized. I won't do that, and I'm willing to bet that most of you won't either. Let me know just how many of you won't. Enter in your email at stopbigcon.com.
This, as Steven probably planned, ignited wide speculation of who could have offered this slave contract in the first place, but most seem to assume Ben Shapiro's very own Daily Wire is the culprit. The company that employs Candace Owens, Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson, I mean, they're one of the biggest sites out there, and as confirmed by their CEO Jeremy Boring in his own video the following day, the Daily Wire had in fact approached Steven with this lucrative contract they believed was not only fair, but grossly misrepresented by Steven in his video. Now, if there's anything I know about Jeremy Boring, it's that he lives up to his fucking name. So I'm gonna try to get through this snooze fest as fast as we can. Something we have to understand before going further, though, is that Steven Crowder, gets banned a lot. It's kind of his thing, really. He acts controversial, gets punished for it, then cries victim. It's pathetic, but you have to understand this works for Steven's brand. It helps drive more traffic over to his own website. Making people think that you're constantly on the brink of losing your platform will galvanize them to support you in other, more profitable ways. They purchase the content, you lock behind a paywall, they buy your merch, subscriptions, whatever it is. Steven's fans are more likely to buy Mug Club when the threat of suspension is constantly looming over Steven's brand. But losing his YouTube revenue would also mean less money is being funneled to the Daily Wire if they were to ever partner. And even though the Daily Wire would be willing to cover a lot of the financial burden if they were to lose advertisers as a result of Steven's controversial segments, as a company looking to make money, they still have to consider their own best interests.
And that's all this was meant to accomplish. You say, well, it's the same in the end anyway, because you're still telling him, if you say something YouTube doesn't like, we're taking away your money. Well, no, if YouTube would be the one taking away the money. We're just saying that we can't bear the entire brunt of that.
After all, as Forbes outlines, the Daily Wire is one of the biggest outlets on Facebook by a wide margin and appears on the top 10 Apple podcast charts. They can't be putting themselves at such risk of losing that position, since existing on Facebook helps them reach so many people. So of course, from a business perspective, it makes sense for the Daily Wire to include that specific clause in the contract. If Steven is earning them less money, then why should he be paid the full $50 million they've offered him? Which, is something else Steven conveniently left out of his original video. I wonder why that is. Could it make him look ungrateful? Like a whiny baby looking for charity in the form of tens of millions of dollars?
Steven's philosophy seems to be, I deserve to be paid millions and millions and millions of dollars, whether my show drives the revenue or not. That's not a business relationship. He's not looking for a business relationship, he's looking for a benefactor.
Because just to summarize here, Steven Crowder was offered a payout of $50 million over the span of 4 years with a guarantee of a little under 200 episodes per year, which equates to only 4 90-minute broadcasts a week, not to mention a 4-week minimum vacation. That's what Steven calls a slave contract. But Jeremy was quickly backed up by the Daily Wire's biggest personality and Steven's own former best friend, Ben Shapipi, on Twitter.
My coochie pink, my booty hole brown.
As well as his own broadcast later that week. It was only after this exchange that Steven brought out the big guns, publicly releasing a phone call between him and Jeremy Boring that Steven had recorded without the CEO's knowledge. I guess this was supposed to prove how unreasonable and slimy Jeremy was being, but he kind of proved the opposite just by being this much of a snake, I think.
Let's say it's a kid who comes in with 500,000 YouTube subscribers or something like that, 100,000. Let's say it's some other kid you're paying 6 figures to come in and do it. There's not the penalty of the demonetization or if they're removed from iTunes, Apple, YouTube.
Yeah, sure there would be. If making money off of those platforms is part of how you're justifying the salary you're paying someone, then or the fee I keep saying salary, the fee you're paying someone, then when those go away, everybody loses money. You can't pay the same amount with less revenue.
How about you create a different business model?
Even when you listen to the call itself, Jeremy sounds anything but uncharitable to Steven, politely explaining his company's position while Steven moans about wanting to be more offensive than what the Daily Caller will allow. If he really wants to be a provocative idiot, then he needs to accept the consequences that could follow as a result. They're still willing to work with him even in the event that he gets banned. It would just equate to a marginally smaller profit, 25% less. This isn't about big tech, it's about business. And the reality that when you play stupid games, sometimes you win stupid prizes. You just can't expect a company like the Daily Wire to abandon all of its interests just to accommodate your annoying edginess. Calm down and grow the fuck up. But it only got pettier from there, with Ben doubling down his support for Jeremy, tweeting, "It's nasty to attack my company and Daily Wire Plus host as a big con by lying about the meeting of a non non-binding term sheet. It's despicable to plan weeks in advance to attack my best friend and your friend by setting up and secretly taping a phone call, all to grow your email list. Sorry, that's the best Shapiro voice I can do, and I'm not done, so get used to it. Prior to October 5th, Steven's agent requests we send an offer. October 5th, we submit a non-binding term sheet. November 2nd, Steven tells Jeremy he wants $30 million per year and us to send him a new offer, refusing to redline the term sheet. November 14th, we told Steven we couldn't do that. December 12th, Steven apparently registers stopbigcon.com, knowing he's leaving the Blaze, and that we haven't provided him an offer to his liking. Steven needed a plan. Attacking us was the plan. December 15th, Steven announces he's leaving the Blaze. January 7th, Steven texts Jeremy in friendly fashion to ask if they could talk. January 9th, Steven calls Jeremy and secretly tapes him. This means 96 days elapsed between when he received the term sheet and when he secretly taped Jeremy. And it means that 36 days elapsed between when he decided to attack Daily Wire and Jeremy by purchasing Stop Big Con, and when he called Jeremy to tape him. Gross. Once more, if you actually care about the supposedly horrific non-binding first offer term sheet offering $50 million for 4 years, Jeremy reads it line by line here. It is quite simple. If your show loses money, you lose money. This is how capitalism works. You know who knows this? Steven Crowder. That's why he has a piss off YouTube segment in which he deliberately does not say the things that will get him kicked off of YouTube and directs people behind his paywall. He must be a shill for YouTube or something. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Sorry. I had to, okay? For the first time, I think, ever, Ben was publicly duking it out with the man he had started a career alongside. And he wasn't alone either. The Daily Wire's own Candace Owens referred to Steven making a total bitch move. And Jordan Peterson originally sided with Steven, tweeting out Steven's initial video before deleting it as soon as he realized it was about the company that employed him. Good save there, man. The reality is that Steven benefits from big tech just as much as the Daily Wire does. Without mainstream platforms like YouTube and Facebook, these guys wouldn't be able to have such an empire of their own. These sites may have basic rules on what they'll allow, but Steven cannot deny they make it possible to run and operate a brand outside of the conventional networks that are usually far more predatory than what the Daily Wire was offering. As journalist Danny DiPlacido put it, Crowder, Shapiro, Owens, and Peterson all use the platforms of big tech to boost their brand and become wealthy, powerful influencers, all while bitterly complaining that the odds were stacked against them, while the millions of dollars floating around in the conservative media sphere tell a radically different story. The nerve of Steven Crowder to complain about such a generous contract from the comfort of his cushy job as a mouthpiece for the Republican Party is ironic, especially considering what else we would learn about Steven's business practices over the following months. But this all only came to light after a series of allegations that shined a light on Steven's more impulsive personal side, putting him at further odds with an audience that was already beginning to turn on him.
Steven has a lot going on. I guess is the best way to say it. He has a lot going on, and that should be clear because people don't do stuff like this if there's not a lot going on in their life. I would like to implore my audience and everybody that is paying attention to this situation not to condemn him, but to pray for him.
After a cryptic message from Candace Owens hinting at some kind of personal difficulties in Steven's life that would explain his recent falling out with the Daily Wire, Steven took to his own channel to publicize his divorce from his wife, Hillary. But if you've watched this video already, you know it's kind of fucking strange. Let's go through it.
Since 2021, I've been living through what has increasingly been a horrendous divorce. Now, let me say on the outset, to be clear, there is no infidelity, any kind of physical abuse at all on either side. And no, this was not my choice. My then wife decided that she didn't want to be married anymore. And in the state of Texas, that is completely permitted. And I still believe that children need a mom and a dad and that divorce is horrible. But in today's legal system, my beliefs don't matter. In Texas, divorce is permitted when one party wants it, period.
So one of the first things you'll notice is Steven's repeated mentioning of no-fault divorce laws in Texas, which allow either party to leave a marriage without cause, which, as many have noted, is kind of a really weird thing to bring up given the context here. Like, how are we supposed to read that exactly? Do you want your wife to stay with you against her will? Should she not be allowed to leave? This is the implicit message a lot of people picked up on in this video, but I learned it also tracks with statements he's made in the past.
If you devalue marriage to nothing more than a hopeless endeavor, well, then you open the floodgates. Yeah. It doesn't matter. You can have no-fault divorce laws. And, you know, it's a big argument you hear all the time.
And it follows a bizarre pattern of men today becoming increasingly critical of no-fault divorce, even in abusive situations.
A year into the relationship, it gets really, really abusive.
From who?
from both.
This is so rare.
Anyone really.
Rare.
Go on.
Go on.
My point is, I'm just, even though it might be rare from what you guys think, if it would happen, what would you recommend for those people to do? Would they divorce, or do you want them to keep going in the relationship?
Keep going. You can't divorce. I mean, that's not a real thing.
Even though it might be like physically abusive?
You gotta endure. People are too...
You want to stick in the relationship?
People are just...
look,
people nowadays
are
just... Everybody quits. Everybody gives up. It's too hard. I'm this XYZ. This is why I'm special, so I can fuck up this entire situation based upon me being special.
It's just a very strange thing for Steven to harp on this much. Just like how he feels the need to clarify that his kids had nothing to do with the separation.
Now, in all of this, one thing I want to be really clear about is certain. True north here is that my children are blameless. Completely without fault.
Like, thank God you cleared that one up. For a minute there, I was convinced your 2-year-old twins were the culprits. I'm glad you put those rumors to bed. Steven ultimately wants everyone to know that this divorce is not something he wanted, despite it being alleged after the fact that Hillary only filed for divorce in December 2021 after she learned Steven had been talking to divorce lawyers himself a month prior, so that's all a bit questionable. But I'm not exactly one to take Steven Crowder's word at face value at this point. In fact, he's so incapable of taking a sliver of accountability, the only thing he blames himself for is picking wrong.
She wanted something else for her life. That's not my choice. She simply wanted out, and the law says that that's how it works. Now, of course, look, I get it. There are multiple sides to every story, but one thing that is undeniable in this case is that it's no one's fault but my own, in that I picked wrong, and that's certainly not the fault of my children.
Yeah, I don't think that's the issue here, but whatever, man. Steven spends the rest of the video accusing Candace of extortion, which she didn't exactly take kindly, to say the least.
Steven Crowder on election night was our friend. He was on the backstage with all of us, laughing, having a great time. He even sent me a retrospectively very flirty message thereafter on Instagram about how nice I looked on election night, even though I didn't respond to it. It's very erratic to go from being friends with somebody, being with them on election night, laughing, having a great time, to suddenly wanting to ruin their entire company. This is what I was thinking. This is a broken man who is on some sort of a spiral. It is likely his divorce that led to this moment. He's acting erratic, he's acting panicked, and this at least gives us some sort of an excuse for why he behaved this way. I then went onto my platform and I said, pray for Steven Crowder, honestly, because that's who he needs. He needs a prayer. And apparently, nobody's answering those prayers right now because he's still acting erratic. He's now upping the ante and suggesting that I extorted him. I will not take that lightly.
Another detail that Steven miraculously forgot to include in this video is that Hillary made a specific and private request via attorney that he not discuss their divorce publicly at all, according to Yashar Ali, whose Substack article we will be discussing in depth. This article, of course, was published alongside the now infamous Ring camera footage, in which Steven can be seen verbally accosting his wife in summer 2021 while she was still pregnant with their twins, embodying some kind of cartoonish villain as he chomps away at a cigar and barks orders at the soon-to-be mother of his children, demanding she fulfill her wifely duties.
I gotta use the bathroom. I'll be right back.
She isn't allowed to take their one car to the store, as if this is some kind of change my mind segment.
If you refuse to do wifely things, then I will go pick up the groceries.
There are no groceries today.
I have steaks, wood pellets, my grill. Hillary, how do you respect me? No, you're not taking the car.
Steven,
you're not taking the car.
Steven,
you are not.
Then I will ask someone to pick me up. Would you like me to ask?
Oh, that's right.
It's not a threat, Steven.
Get an Uber.
Okay, Steven, I can't.
You want to walk out right now? Listen to me. I can't go to the gym. I can't go to my parents. I can't call my friends. I can't be home. You're going to take the car and leave me here. Hillary, just think of how boxed in you've made me.
What do you need me to pick up? I'll get it. I'll be back when I'm back.
No, that doesn't work either. You'll be back when you're back. That doesn't work either.
Now, this is another point of contention many have rightfully been quick to question. Why the f*** does Steven Crowder, a man worth tens of millions of dollars at least, have only one car to split between him and his wife? All we can do as outsiders is speculate. But it has been said how abusers tend to keep just one car at the house as a way to stifle their partner's mobility and independence, forcing them to stay reliant on their abusive spouse, which makes it harder to escape an abusive situation, both mentally and logistically. Regardless, Steven insists his wife, who is 8 months pregnant with twins at this point, might I emphasize, should take an Uber for the errands he insists she complete, which include fetching steaks and grill pellets for her husband. She's literally doing this for him, and he still is sitting here treating her like a misbehaving child, expressing her concern that the dog food she'd be dealing with could potentially be harmful for pregnant women. Not that Steven would care about any of that. He's smoking a fucking cigar in front of a pregnant woman, for God's sake. So much for caring about the safety of the unborn, huh, Steven? Those are his own children he's hurting, if that's any indication of what an amazing father he'll turn out to be. I mean, it's frankly hard not to get mad here. In the video, Steven becomes more agitated as he asks if Hillary's feeling some constraint and says if she takes the car to, again, get his groceries, then he won't be able to go to the gym, see his parents, or his friends. Just tragic stuff. But you know what would solve that? Using a fraction of your wealth to buy a second car, maybe. I don't know. Steven goes on to demand Hillary show him respect and that discipline is the only way she's getting out of this, whatever the hell that means. She's an adult woman, not a dog.
The only way out of this is discipline and respect. It's the only way out of it, and we're at an impasse.
We are at an impasse.
Good. Because you can't have any discipline and respect.
Yeah.
There you go. You throw your hand. You give up so easily.
I don't give up, Steven.
You give up so easily. I just said the only way out of this is discipline and respect. You said, then we're at an impasse.
Steven, no, we are at an impasse.
Hillary assures Steven that she loves him and is committed to their marriage. But Steven not only replies with "I don't love you," he insists that if she were truly committed, she'd put on gloves to deal with the toxic dog medication.
And I need some space. We need to just talk and baby for a little bit, okay? I love you. I love you very much.
I don't love you. That's the big problem. I've never received love from you, and the fact is, when I go, look, I need you to do A, B, C, and D, you just be disciplined about it, you go, no. But I love you more than life itself. Okay. Put on some gloves. No. But I love you more than life itself. That's not fair. That's not fair, and it's disingenuous. Become someone, listen to me, day in and day out, worthy of a wife, no, not as a wife. I didn't say as a wife. Hillary, come on now.
I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to engage anymore.
And as Hillary calls his abuse sick, Steven snaps back with a stern "watch it."
I love you, but Steven, your abuse is sick. Your abuse
Watch it.
is sick.
Watch it. And watch it.
I'm gonna let go. I'll get what you need me to get.
The two eventually head inside, where Steven and Hillary have both confirmed that Steven shouted the words "I will fuck you up" before Hillary took the car and retreated to her parents' house, afraid for what Steven could have done had she stayed in the home.
I'll text me what you need. I'll get you what you need. I love you. I'm committed to you.
Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to do those things?
I'm not trying to.
Are you committed enough to do those things? You're not committed to anything. You're not committed to anything. You just said I love you. I'm committed to it. Walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to do those things? Are you committed enough to do those things? Are you committed enough to do those things?
I'm gonna just
walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to get the medication that dogs?
When approached for comment, Hillary's family issued the following statement to Yashar. Hillary is currently living alone in Dallas, apart from her family and support system in Michigan, and is focused on taking care of her young children. She is not prepared at this time to speak about her divorce becoming public or the misleading statements made by Steven about their relationship. The truth is that Hillary spent years hiding Steven's mentally and emotionally abusive behavior from her friends and family while she attempted to save their marriage. She was the one who was asking to work on the relationship to keep the marriage intact for their unborn children. In June of 2021, Steven left their home to pursue elective surgery. Hillary urged him to get the help he needed to address his abuse with the hope that their marriage could be saved and that they could peacefully live together as a family. Instead, Steven refused to do so and chose not to be with his wife during the birth of their twin children. After the birth, Steven bought a townhouse and left their home permanently. Hillary was unaware that Steven had hired a divorce attorney and asked his assistant to cut Hillary off financially. There is significant documentation substantiating these facts. We hope that Steven will cease speaking publicly about these personal matters in an untruthful manner. We also look forward to there being full transparency in the legal process so there is fairness and accountability for the actions that caused the divorce and to ensure the outcome is what is in the best interest of the young children. Steven's response to this leak is pretty much what you'd you'd expect that his words were taken out of context, and that the footage we saw was deceptively edited, something that Stephen has had plenty of experience doing, but yeah, I digress.
Look, broken marriages are ugly, and in them people do ugly things. Myself, of course included, I would never claim otherwise. However, due to recent misleadingly edited leaks to the tabloid press without context and not subject to consequences of the court,
I'm just wondering what context could justify threatening to f up your pregnant wife. I'm curious if Stephen has a defense for that.
So today, I have filed a motion to officially unseal all files as they relate to the matter of legal record. Finances, relevant medical records, including mental health history or evaluations, depositions, and any motions or sanctions from the courts of Texas. I will not be leaking private marital information to the press, but if the privacy agreements are not respected by all parties, I will address all that is a matter of irrefutable legal record in full context next week.
But some of the supporters he still has left have made the argument that, well, all marriages are hard. One example of an argument isn't enough evidence of abuse, though Yashar, who publicized the video in the first place, goes on to cite a series of text and audio messages from Stephen that he personally reviewed before publishing his story, of which Stephen reportedly admitted numerous times to having a volcanic temper, and that he has been working to control it through therapy. Though at one point in the audio messages, as Yashar testifies, Stephen Crowder gets upset because he is frustrated that he is not getting enough credit for not having lost his temper for months, but adds that he can't promise he won't lose it again in the future. Another point to note here is that Stephen and his wife exchanged a series of messages the day before the birth of their twins, in which Hillary pleaded with her then husband one last time, stating, "Stephen, I'm afraid of you and your rage. You are scary. You scare me. I want to heal things, but you have to take responsibility. Stop blaming others. Stop feeling pain and sadness."
As sad as it is, it does sound like Stephen needs fucking help, dude.
It's only for yourself. But it's not like this is the only instance we have of Stephen losing his temper and flying off the handle.
We all need to hit a button and cross.
I know, but I'm trying to do promotion right now.
Brian Callen, yes.
Let's go live. Let's make this the best show ever, huh?
Already live?
No, but
You have no idea what I could have been doing, and that camera's turned on?
Well, yeah, but
the way you get in trouble, Brian.
But you move like a jungle cat.
If his own show doesn't indicate he's prone to random emotional outbursts, maybe you'll take the word of his former employees. Shortly after the Ring camera footage was published, the New York Post, of all places, reached out to a handful of current and ex-employees, 10 of which outlined an alleged pattern of abuse, not particularly out of line with the leaked footage we just saw. While most of these names are anonymous thanks to NDAs, one former employee stated they weren't shocked, but that it was pathetic what he did to Hillary, telling the Post, "This might not be the Stephen you see on his show, but that was the real Stephen." These individuals claim he ran an abusive company, screamed at employees, including his dad, impulsively gave the order to fire random people over Discord, made his underlings complete personal tasks like wash his laundry, and yes, Stephen also had a fun little habit of exposing his genitals to his pals. And I don't even have to say allegedly to this one because it's something he's literally done on camera. But hey man, it's a joke. It's all a joke. It's funny. The only funny thing in this scenario is that Stephen keeps willfully writing sketches where he has to show his balls to somebody.
It says, quote, Crowder was known to expose his genitals to staffers.
Well, hold on a second. Yes.
Yes. Just wait. I mean,
that did happen. I mean, what are you talking about? The Terminator 2 sketch? Because remember the nudies didn't fit?
Oh,
is it that one, Sam?
Yeah.
Well, now there
was it the ET ones through the cornfields where we had to run naked through the cornfields?
Yeah, we were naked in that one. Yeah,
we were naked in that one too.
That was a good one. That was the night, though.
Was it gay Captain America?
But you know you didn't have to make the skit, right? No one's forcing you to drop trowel around your fellow straight guy friends. I mean, something's going on here. Especially when most of these claims were not a part of any sketches. A grand total of 6 separate employees told the Post about incidents they witnessed firsthand, with one citing a specific moment in a van coming back from a 2018 event in Illinois where Jared was asleep in the last row. Stephen was in front, and he was joking about what he was going to do. The staffer recalled. He climbed over and dropped his junk on top of Jared's shoulder, going on to list another instance where Stephen exposed himself to not gay Jared in 2017 during a video shoot. But these employees continued. Another one describing a time they witnessed Stephen put his testicles on his longtime friend John Goodman, who shook off the incident and did not return the Post request for comment either. A fourth employee also alleged they saw Stephen expose himself to his former co-host Dave Landau at a conference table. It was childish, but then I found out it was something he did. At first, I took it as him trying to be friendly or one of the guys. Now I see it was a power play, the witness stated. Adding, if your manager at Red Lobster did this, it would be national news. A lot of these employees contend Steven surpassed the title of just a tough boss with the way he ran things, being called an unreasonable micromanager who is not only capable of working every angle of your emotions, but would send out unrealistic assignments after hours and set people up for failure. One former employee adding, it was like a cult where you were all in, and that he did not want you having a life outside of it, often blaming employees for projects failing to live up to his expectations. One employee telling the Post, we'd tell him things wouldn't work when a live show in 2018 didn't go as he had planned, adding, I thought surely Steven, who micromanaged the whole thing, is going to take some responsibility here. But accountability from Steven Crowder is a bit much to ask for. Steven instead decided to use the opportunity to gift each of his employees a book titled Extreme Ownership, How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. We all thought we were going to get an apology, but we got a book. It was like a sick...
Extreme Ownership, yeah, that book is a little bit problematic. But it's like a good mindset to start with, to know that, like, you know, if you're someone who is prone to, like, deferring and making excuses, taking ownership of things, even when sometimes it might not exactly be your fault, just like kind of being like, all right, what can I do in this situation, and keeping that top of mind. That's something that I definitely practice more and more with my son, where it's like, you know, like, in a way, something is, you know, if he's getting up, he's interrupting something or whatever, so to speak. This is like, you know, my initial thought. If he's interrupting something, or if he's like, you know, being difficult, or whatever kind of things you wanna, whatever parents say about their kids, you know, that's on me. That was my decision to, you know, have him with my wife. So that's our issue, not his issue, at least for the time being while we're raising him. But it's, you know, I guess that's sort of what he was implying, but it doesn't really work, like, when everyone's adults and they're working together and they actually have responsibilities. My son is 19 months old, so a little bit different. Crowder wants the baby treatment, dude.
His repeated tirades against his own booking agent and father reportedly made former employees uncomfortable. He did it regularly, and it was usually about failing to book someone he wanted on the show. Steven would say, I'm supposed to get stars. I mean, how can you demand respect from your employees when you continuously scream at your own father in front of everybody? I mean, you're a joke. You're being insane.
Cool. Yeah,
One source concluding, we don't want Steven to suffer. We just want the abuse to stop, or at least let future employees know what they're getting themselves into. Which, by the way, I can only hope enough people listen to, especially considering all of the job applications Steven is throwing out on Twitter. With all things considered, it's no wonder why so many people are no longer at Louder with Crowder. According to Dave, Steven was so obsessed with getting the last word on his show that he had a light hooked up to a button behind his desk that, when pressed, would indicate to Dave to shut up.
It became a little weird because a light was put in where it was his rant button, and it was basically a Dave Don't Talk button.
Wait, so there's literally a light bulb?
There was 4 lights in a row.
I'm
serious. And when it was hit, I wasn't supposed to talk, and they said,
was it like a regular colored light bulb, or was it like red?
It was like a yellow, a pretty bright yellow, like you know, like yield.
So it's like off camera, but in your eyesight.
Yes, and
was he the one pressing the button, or was there a producer pressing the button?
He would press it.
So like Mr. Burns, like he had a button under his desk or whatever, the table, and when it's Steven's turn to talk,
they have footage.
and Dave
Yes, please show the footage. Show that beautiful beat footage.
Yes.
Despite Dave being his literal co-host, Stephen was obsessed with having the spotlight to himself. In this podcast alone, Dave accused Stephen of censorship, jealousy, and intentionally stifling the careers of people he felt threatened by comedically, reinforcing a claim from another anonymous source who insisted Stephen's sentiment of wanting smaller conservative voices heard was hollow. If you were funny or talented, he squashed you. Stephen's weird attitude towards Dave Landau became so unnecessarily strained, eventually reaching a breaking point that Dave could only describe as venomous, when he supposedly uttered the words, "I own you," to his once co-host and apparent friend.
And my phone rings. You know, I don't want to go greatly into the conversation between us, but it was, he's like, do you still want to be on Louder with Crowder? And I said, not at the moment. And he starts going off on me, and now there's a ton of people in my apartment who can hear it.
Wait, like he's literally raising his voice?
He's screaming at me.
Okay, so literally raising his voice, not just being stern, like to the point where it's audible.
It's audible, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, it's started stern, but then it got into telling me that he owns me. And
in those words?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. He owns me. It was just, it was venomous, and stupid. I don't know what he was going through at that point, and I just was like, dude, it was all this projection coming at me.
Was this the first time he had yelled at you?
What is this
that
podcast
way, yes,
called?
Where it had come out where I saw a different person that I had heard rumors about. I understand that there's going to be a touch of narcissism to anybody who's sort of in that field.
Right.
I get
You're welcome.
But at the same time, it was so over the top that I was trying not to laugh. And then he said, if we were going to tour together in the future, Matt couldn't do his closing bit on stage. Somehow that comes up. So you could tell there was this projection of how he was angry of how well that bit did.
He told you to tell your friend, who you don't own, that if he's going to tour with you, he can't end on the closer that kills, that gets standing ovations?
He said it was too dirty. You know, he then did this very oddly telling thing. He's like, this is why you don't have any friends. And I was like, what are you, like,
Wait,
it literally,
he said that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the phone call was recorded so we can always hear it. And I'm not saying that to be a jerk. I'm just saying that he legitimately records his phone calls.
Stephen isn't very good at maintaining professional or even personal relationships, evidently. And whether it has to do with the bullying he received as a kid, his urge to talk over everyone in the room, or his own jealousy of those he perceives as more talented than him, once you get past all the smoke and mirrors and ignore all the culture war BS that surrounds his erroneously played up macho man persona, what else do you have left? A failed comedian turned professional crybaby, helplessly pleading to be liked by anyone who will listen.
But we're talking about bullying. The reason that bullying in high school is so unbearable, or in the workplace, for example, is because it's chronic, it's systemic. If you have a boss or a supervisor who's a bully, you still have to go in the next day. The real problem there is you have to face that bully every single day. There's no way to get away from it. That's a big defining factor for me.
Since the beginning of Stephen Crowder's career, his main mission has always stayed the same: to provoke.
Gotta go get him.
Only nowadays, he's doing it under the transparent guise of pseudo-intellectualism, as he desperately longs for approval from a purely reactionary crowd. He doesn't possess the talent needed to make it in the entertainment industry the usual way, so instead, he had to find another way in by misrepresenting data, spreading lies, and bankrolling hatred. I personally believe these efforts are a calculated way to cover up his own insecurities and just be taken seriously for once in his life, even when it means limiting his debates to unprepared 19-year-olds, being a contrarian edgelord for attention, and destroying every professional relationship he's ever had. It's not a compliment when I say Stephen is consistent in his beliefs, meaning he seems to live by all the horrendous shit he preaches on his garbage radio show. And where has it gotten him? Hated by all his peers and estranged from his former partner. From the information we have, it looks like Stephen ruined his own marriage on account of treating his wife like property when he thinks he can get away with it. Hillary appears to have endured his abuse for years and is still facing the wrath of Stephen's words publicly, like when he threatened to release her mental health records if she didn't back off. This is a person he's been devoted to for the past decade. If he doesn't respect her enough to not attack her on a massive platform, why why should he be given any level of respect by anyone? Steven Crowder is someone who should never be taken seriously. He should be mocked into oblivion for his disingenuous arguments, his weak attempts at humor, and shameless abuse of those his Christian morals teach him to love and cherish unconditionally. Steven is a liar, an abuser, and a fraud. And when all is said and done, he's just not very fucking funny, is he?
Hopefully you have a good day, good Sunday. And I mean, this is why. Thanks, Aubrey. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good day.